Hello, and welcome to the Book Refuge, and welcome to the long-awaited book review and discussion for A Breath of Snow and Ashes by Diana Gabaldon. This one's very hard to show because it's the pretty shiny one, but here it is. So, wow, there is so much to say about this book. I'm sure you can already tell this is an epically long video. I foresee it being pretty long because, man, it was so hard to break this one down and how to talk about it. I know in previous ones I've kind of went by character, or I've went by things I liked, things I didn't like, or there's so many things that I've tried to do with previous books. And this one is so much harder because the structure of it to me is like a catalog of days. It's not so specific as to be like a journal of what's going on, but the main core plots in this one are hard to pick out because there's a lot of stories that arc and fall. And it really kind of is just told in some very interesting ways. There's so much happening in it, and it's just really hard to do that. So the way that I'm going to kind of do this one is I'm going to do my normal, like, tell you the backstory of this. I'll talk a little bit about our main kind of like points of view that we're dealing with here. And then I'm going to talk about like my fave moments in this, because there isn't really anything I dislike about this. It's really hard to pick those things out. So instead, and this isn't going to be chronologically either. I'm really sorry about that, but these are spoiler reviews, and the things I want to talk about that were the most touching and important to me, it's easiest to just do those by like moments and like story arcs kind of. So that's just what we're going to do. And then at the end, I'll talk about kind of some plots that all really got wrapped up in this, and what we're looking into going next, because there is, you know, still two more books that are out currently, as well as, you know, that 9th book. Who knows when we'll get it, but I will have you ready for it by that time. Anyway, I know some of you have been reading along with me. Some of you are like ahead of me now, but I really, really enjoy the discussions we have. Some of the messages you leave me are so detailed, and they're just everything that I want, and I just love this so much. So let's go into this. So A Breath of Snow and Ashes. So the backstory about reading this. So I've actually read this book. This was the 3rd time I've read it. Oh, cool. I even had a bookmark in this one. I read this book the same as the rest. The first time through, I read these in 2016, I want to say. And then I reread this one. I can't remember when the second read was. I know it's on my Goodreads, because I knew I really liked this book. There's so many amazing things that happen in this one, so many deep, meaty character parts. So this was my 3rd read through, and as with all of them, I have been annotating as I went. This poor book got a little beat up because it actually went to Colombia with me. If you're someone who follows, you'll know that I was just gone for 2 weeks, and I was in Colombia, and I wasn't going to bring this book with, and then at the last minute I was like, you know, I can pack it in my backpack on the way there, and if I finish it, I'll put it in my suitcase on the way back. And I mean, yes, it made my backpack very heavy, but it was worth it because I had been struggling to get through it. And it wasn't because I didn't want to be reading it. These books are just, like I said, there's no specific through plot really, because it's so meandering in a beautiful way. Of course, Diana's amazing, but it is kind of like this. And so I was just at a spot where something pretty big had just ended, and then I just wasn't in a, I could use this as a reflector shield almost. I just wasn't in a hurry to get going again. But bringing it with me there, we had a couple layovers that got extended pretty long, and so I took advantage of those, and I finished this. So I just enjoyed it this much, so much even more, because I've been diving so deep into these on the reread. I know where we're at with all of our characters. I know what the big decisions are and what we're doing, and I was ready to go. And this book, I tracked it this time. This book takes place over a little over 3.5 years. It starts in March of 1773 and goes through December of 1776. And holy moly, do we cover some ground. So I'm just going to mention our like main POV characters in this one. I believe what I could find, I think we had like 5 POVs in this one. As always, there is mostly Claire, but we got more of Jamie than we've ever had. We had a lot of Roger and Bree, like a good chunks of them from them. And then we had some Ian, which was amazing. So we got Ian back at the end of the last book. He had went through some things. We're going to get to him more in depth in a moment here. But he is back with us, and he's trying to find his place. He now has tattoos. He has an interesting way that he does his hair now, because he had been with the Mohawk for, I believe it was a little over 2 years that the last book took place in. And he's having kind of an adjustment period. He's also quite a looker, of course. He has filled out. He's all manly now. His voice is really a lot deeper, and he still has Rolo with him. And it's awesome. It's awesome having him back. There isn't enough of him. I love how he fits back in, but there's also like a little bit of tension, because Roger, who is relieved to have him back because he felt that weight of trying to live up to Ian Murray, who it was his fault that he was gone. And, you know, they named their son partially after him and just all these things. But Ian is just a presence, and I love having him there. I love that we trust him. I love that a lot of times when something's going wrong, or Jamie's in a bind, or Claire's in a bind, like Ian shows up and he's just there. And he has now this stealthiness and quietness that he didn't have before. He's not an awkward teenager. He's not misspeaking when he shouldn't. He listens. He's more silent. And that's why I feel like we don't get enough of him, because he's not noticed as much, but he sees a lot. And I love that about him. But yeah, lots more of Claire, just watching her be the mistress of Fraser's Ridge, and how she interacts with the people, and how a lot of people don't know what to think of her even now, and that a lot of her respect that she has comes from her being Jamie's wife, but we see as she earns it for herself. It's amazing watching her come up with new, you know, ways to do procedures, just continuing. This is all stuff we've seen before, but it's amazing. Bree, she really is inventing so many things. Like, she invents matches. She's working on making clay pipes so they can have like running water to the house. Her and Roger decide during this book that they want to have another child, and they're having some struggles deciding if they want to do that, and then some struggles conceiving that. And it's really amazing. And Roger, he becomes a minister in this, a Presbyterian minister. And so he is dealing with the people of the Ridge in that capacity. He's doing funerals, and he is overseeing marriages, and he is, you know, doing that role. And it's great to see, like, him and Jamie had built such a tight relationship in Fiery Cross, and watching how that expands. I have some in the moments we're going to go through some good ones in there, but seeing how he fits into that role, and how Bree does being a minister's wife, and how Roger promises her when he takes this over, he's like, I feel like this is the role I need, but God won't come before you, which as a Christian, I don't completely agree with that, but I know what he means. He doesn't mean God the being, he means his duties to God, like his family will always come first. And Bree's like, I know that, and I respect that about you, and this is why you're supposed to do this job. And I just love the respect and, like, for the most part, wonderful communication they have. Like I said, they are, to me, they're the realistic couple goals that you want, because Jamie and Claire, we're couple goals, we want them. But the realistic couple goal to me is Bree and Roger, and like how they work together and communicate and support each other. To me, that's a realistic couple, and I love it. I love seeing that on display, and how they navigate things, and how they be parents together, and it just makes me all warm and cozy, and it's so beautiful. So yeah, so then some like main threads that we're going to come up when I talk about this list of moments that I have here is we have, you know, there is a lot of interaction with the Christies here, who we met them very briefly at the end of the Fiery Cross when Jamie was ill. Roger accepted them onto the ridge in his place, and we don't know what to think of him. So the Christies are Presbyterians, and so there's Tom and his two children, Alan and Malva, who Malva quickly takes to Claire and wants to help her in the surgery and like to be there for her and learn about medicine and everything, which is very interesting, and we'll talk about Malva in just a minute. And then we also have the thread of Jamie looking for the point when he should switch sides, because he knows that the Americas will win this war, but we are 10, 15 years from that happening, and he needs to play his cards well to not lose his land, to not lose, you know, what he's set up. He's made, you know, all the Scottish who have come here, they've had to swear an oath forsaking their country and promising to uphold the king here. And so he's in a very interesting spot, and watching him navigate that is very interesting. We also have the looming fire approaching, which the whole thing that spurred Bree and Roger to end up back in this time was that Bree found a time foreseeing their death to happen in January of 1776, I believe, or sometime in there. I can't remember the exact date because it's different in the show than in the book, and I can't remember, but that's what spurred her to be there. So they have this thing where like every, you know, when it comes to that day, they all will end up staying somewhere else. And then there's the comedy of like, well, wait, what if it's this one and not that one? Like, we don't know. And so there's that kind of looming over us. And then we will talk about kind of the wrap-ups of the gold finally. Like, who has the gold? Where is it? What is it? How the gold? Why the gold? Oh my word, the gold, for crying out loud. And yeah, so there's so much going on in this book. It's really hard to summarize it. I know you're not here completely for a summary. You're here for my like more in detailed thoughts, but there's just so much going on. And the things with these books is you'll know if you've read them before, if, you know, you're rereading along with me or the first time. Like, I didn't know what I was getting the first time. And these books aren't about having a start to finish plot. They're about spending life with these people. And once you know that, you know you're here to spend life with them, then you can just enjoy the time. And so that's what it is for me. Every time I pick up this book with my pen and my notes, it's what am I experiencing with these people? What are their struggles? What are their hurts? What are their wants? So much so to the point that, and if you're someone if you're following along with my reviews of the TV show, one of the things that's frustrating me about that is that through Diana's writing, she has made the characters of these people just burst forth to me. So much so that I know how they're going to react to a situation. I know what they're going to do. When something happens, I might not know how it'll get to that point, but I know what their reaction is going to be. And there are times when Diana makes you question it, makes the character question it. Maybe they go through something new that changes them, but the way that they get to each emotion, each thing is clearly spelled out. You know why they act the way they do. And so when stuff happens in the TV show where someone does something that is not in their character, it pisses me off because it's like, you guys haven't done you haven't done the homework as well as you think you have, and you're just trying to make interesting TV instead of trusting these characters. But anyway, enough rant. That is why I love these books so much, and why I'm so happy that they're thousands of pages, is because I'm spending life with them. And something simple that can be such a big thing. Like, it's like why people watch soap operas for years and years and years. It's because you care about the people and you want to see how their life works out. So here's what we're going to do. In no particular order, I wrote a list. I think I have 10 things here. I didn't even mean it to be 10. There'll be more that come up, where I'm just going to talk through some different things that happen. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on them. Pick any one of them. And what I'm going to do for this, though, is I will have chapter times down below about just really like vague things, so that if you want to skip to a topic, you can, because I think this is going to be pretty long, like I said. So if there's a particular, you know, topic that you want to hear my thoughts on, you can go down below and see that. I think that will be the best use of time for you. So here we go. The first one I have, and like I said, these are not in chronological order. I just wrote them down. So the first one we have here is Roger's first sermon. So this is so cute. So Roger, he has worked through a lot of his like throat issues through, you know, the past years. It's still not to the point he wants it to, but he's going to give his first sermon. So they're doing it at, they have all these benches brought in, and like everyone is there. The Christies are sitting in the front row. Jamie and Claire and everyone came, even though not all of them are Presbyterian. The Frasers are out to support. So he's giving his first sermon, and it's going so well, and then a snake sneaks in. And this is just so funny because I love how Diana does this. She takes such a comedic moment and she just fills it with such like heart. So the snake sneaks in, which that's a hard sentence to say. And Roger sees it and he doesn't know what to do because he doesn't want to make a big scene about it, but he also doesn't want to just run and grab the snake. And so the snake is like making its way up the aisle, and it like kind of like goes up this side of a chair and then like goes back down, and he's trying to like signal to Bree but continue doing his talk, and then Jamie notices it. And so from the previous book, Jamie was bitten by a snake and almost died, and it was a whole big thing. And Jamie, not wanting Roger's first sermon to become a joke, and we talked about like a snake, grabs this snake and puts it under his shirt. And then the snake starts like coming out his neck, and Claire grabs it out of Jamie's thing and puts it in her bag. And it's just so funny. It's so funny. But it also is so touching because Jamie grabs the snake, which it's not a poisonous snake or anything, but it still could bite him, and is willing to put it in his shirt to save Roger from having a debacle, his first message. And Jamie's not even Presbyterian, but he loves his son-in-law and he doesn't want him to be embarrassed. And so he does this little thing. And I just love this moment because I think, again, it just shows his like caring, and that the bond that these two have, that Jamie would never want to mess it up, and that his family takes care of it for him so that nobody else sees it. And it's so cool. I love it so much. So the next thing we need to talk about, and this one's hard, is Fergus and Marcelly and their son, Henri Christian. So they have a baby boy who is a dwarf. So he is a little person born, and in that time, that was seen as a curse to have a child that had anything wrong with them, even though he worked perfectly fine. It was really hard birth. That whole scene is really hard too because we're really afraid that we're going to lose Marcelly. And Fergus takes this birth very hard. He goes into a really deep depression. He is drinking. He and Marcelly have a lot of trouble because he can't really work well. A lot of things go on, and this actually leads to, later on, a few years down, there's a lot of bullying that happens. There's a lot of kids trying to hurt Henri Christian, and Fergus tries to kill himself. And he tries to kill himself so that Marcelly could marry someone else. And we see many, many scenes of this with Fergus. It's actually really hard because we love Fergus, but he is struggling with something that we don't know how to help him with, because he does live in a time where only having one hand makes him kind of useless. And Marcelly's taking on more and more work because of it. And it's very, very hard. Like, it's very difficult. And just seeing them suffer is so painful. But I love when Jamie talks to him, and like Jamie explains, he's like this is not the way to do it, because you would then leave her with a crippled son and no one to help her. And do you think she would feel better that you killed yourself so she could marry someone else, and, you know, all these things or whatever? And it's just so heartbreaking. So it actually leads to them moving to a different town, and he starts running a printing press there and kind of riding the line between being a rebel and being a loyalist too, because that is a struggle everyone's happening. There's a lot of the, you know, the regulators attacking loyalists and loyalists getting attacked by that. There's just a lot of it going on, and it's really dangerous. But but some other things that leads to is things with Henri Christian is there's a lot of boys who are abusing him and people who are saying bad things, and they almost drown him. And Roger comes upon them and he beats the boys, and then he takes Henri Christian and he baptizes him. And he says he belongs to God now, you little bastards. And I love that scene so much. It's so beautiful. And then Jamie says, he's like, well, not only does he belong to God, he belongs to me. And you guys better remember it. And I just love it. I love whenever Jamie claims someone. And of course he's claiming Henri Christian. It's his grandson and he doesn't care. Like, he doesn't care at all. But yeah, so that leads to Margus and Margus. That's their ship name. Fergus and Marcelly moving to a new town, and he takes up being a printer. So that is an arc that takes place over a few years in the book, and it's really hard, but it's good to have Fergus in a place where he can be useful. You can only do type with like one hand anyway, and it's great to have him be in a safe place. But it was hard to live through that for sure. All right, so now we get to, this one's going to be really hard to break down. This is going to be a long section of the video here. And that is Tom Christie and just everything that happens with that. So like I mentioned, Malva, she takes to wanting to help Claire in her surgery. And her father, Tom, he's a very interesting man. And every time I've read the books with him in it, I just don't know what to think of him, because I get so many weird feelings about him in good and bad. He's so complex. And I love that this is almost like a third, you know, this isn't even a B-level character. This is like a third-level character who is just fascinating. And the whole story with Malva and him, and then, So Tom Christie, very standoffish. Him and Jamie have a very antagonistic yet still a respected relationship between the two of them. He has a problem with his hand where Claire ends up doing a surgery for him, and he has to do stretches, and he ends up letting her do it, but after he goes back and forth about it, it's so interesting because I know how the whole story plays out now. So reading it this time, I tried to think about it as I was like, okay, so if I was reading this as a historical romance and there's no Jamie, which we would never take Jamie away, but I'm just saying, if we were reading this as Claire's interacting with this person and she doesn't have a Jamie, this totally reads as like a hate to lovers situation. I know I'm a book reviewer, okay? I'm going there. So whenever I would read Tom and Claire's interactions, I would be like, okay, read this as there's no Jamie, and I'm not 100,000,000% sure Claire and Jamie forever. And it's very interesting to watch because Tom has this like, she is a mystical woman. She is a surgeon. She's maybe a witch. He doesn't really think she's a witch because he says he's met a witch before. And we're like, okay, well, maybe you're just being a hypocritical, you know, religious person. And his actions never totally add up to us because we know that he beats Malva sometimes, or we think we know that. And there's just these things going on that we don't understand about him. Like, we don't know what's going on. So there's so much. There's too much to cover. I'm trying to share with you what my feelings are about it, not the story itself. Like, you read the story if you want to know. But we get to this point after all these interactions with him where Malva gets brought before Jamie and Claire, and that we find out she's pregnant. Now, we've already seen, and this is we'll be talking about this later in the discussion, we've already seen them deal with the case of a girl showing up pregnant, because there's a lot of young single women and single men and things are happening. And Jamie good-naturedly is like, tell me who the father is and I'll make sure it all works out. I'll make sure he marries you. I'll make sure it's okay. And then Malva claims that Jamie is the father of her baby, and very passionately. And Claire just has like a mind blank because she knows that Jamie didn't do this. There was a portion earlier in the book where Claire was sick for a long time, and Malva tells this very detailed story. She knows what parts of Jamie's body look like. And you're like, well, okay, well, maybe she's seen him bathing. Like, she knows these crazy details about him. And she knows exactly when they slept together. And she does all these things. And Tom is like, well, I assume you're not going to put your wife aside and marry my daughter. So we have a problem. And you're just like, what the heck? And so we don't know what to do about this or like what's going on. And then a couple weeks later, and it's horrible because everybody on the ridge believes that Jamie did it. And so there's just this horrible thing going around and you're like, we know he never would have done this. The man went for a year, like he doesn't, you know what I mean? You're just like, you know, he didn't do this, but it's so convincing. And then Malva turns up dead. And Claire tries to save the baby, and they both die. And so everyone finds Claire holding this baby and a bloody Malva Christie. And Claire ends up accused for murder. And we find out that Malva has slept with so many people on the ridge that it could have been anybody's baby, including Ian's, who before she turns up dead, Ian says, Claire, you know, he asked her, should I say that it could be mine and marry her so this cleans up? And they're like, no, it'll just look like you're covering up for Jamie. And if you don't want to be with her, don't. And she's like, do you love her? And he's like, I don't. It's a really uncomfortable conversation to have with your aunt, but he's like, she's beautiful and it was fun, but I couldn't sleep beside her because I felt like I had to keep one eye open. So we get this like weird feeling about her. So through, you know, the whole other stuff where Claire ends up almost being like convicted of this murder. Both her and Jamie get arrested. They get taken from the ridge by the Browns and just all the stuff happens. And Tom ends up confessing to the murder. He was never going to let them kill Claire, but he was hoping that there would be some kind of justice. But he didn't kill her, and Claire knows that. But Tom takes the blame for who Malva is on himself. So then we hear this whole story about how Malva isn't really his daughter. It's his brother's daughter. So it's his niece. And that his wife actually killed his brother and that she was a witch. Like, you know, not a witch, but like she actively was trying to be a witch. And so Tom shares all these things. And it's so strange because you're like, he's not saying any of this as like a trick or a lie. He's just sharing what he's seen. And he's seen Malva do these things and where she was the one who actually poisoned Claire and Tom, because a bunch of people on the ridge got sick, but Tom and Claire had a different disease than anybody else did. And it was because Malva, who had been working with Claire, knew about germs and things, and she tried to poison them, and it didn't work. And so then we find out that when she became pregnant, that she like slept with a bunch of different men within a very short amount of time to try to like pick one of them to be the father, and just all these crazy things. And so Tom takes the blame because he's like, I didn't discipline my daughter enough, or I didn't love her right. Just all these things. And Claire is so sad, and she realizes that Tom loves her. So that was a lot of explanation, I know. But this storyline is just so crazy. What have you guys ever thought of it? Because I ended up feeling, and you know, this isn't the last time we see Tom Christie, but we believe he's going to be hanged for it, is what we think. I end up feeling so conflicted about him because there's parts of his character that you just don't get it. And then other parts where you're like, what would you do? And then of course we find out that it's Alan, her brother / actually her half brother, half cousin, who he had been abusing Malva and basically molesting her and having a sexual relationship with her and abusing her because he wanted her for himself. And that he was so angry that because she was going to tell the truth that the baby wasn't Jamie's, because Malva actually loved Claire and didn't want didn't want to mess up their lives. So it's so hard because I don't know like which story I believe, and Diana doesn't ever really tell you how it all went down, but I want to believe that she was actually being abused by her. Well, I don't want to believe that, right? But that Alan was the one abusing her. But then what, like, was she not really doing a love spell or trying to poison Tom and Claire, and it was just a coincidence that they had the same sickness even though they hadn't seen each other and all that time? Like, I don't know. What do you guys think? What have you ever thought about that storyline? It's crazy. I need to move on now, so we'll do that. Next, one of my other favorite things is Bree and Ian and the journey they go on together to see the like the fossils of the animals, and Ian shares his story with Bree. Well, he shares it with Marcelly too, about how he lost, Emily and him lost their first daughter together, and then she had a couple more miscarriages, and then actually asked Ian for a Indian divorce, however it works, and they kind of pushed him out of their family then, because their bodies, they couldn't have children together. And Ian and Bree have this amazing relationship we get to see explored. I love seeing it. It's so beautiful. And he asked Bree if he should go back and fight for Emily or if he should stay. And Bree says, you know, she let you go. I think you should stay with us. And I think it's so beautiful. I love getting to see the progression of Ian's character. He's so precious. I just want all the good things for him. He's the bestest little boy ever. So I love Ian. Next, the rape and assault of Claire. This happens closer to the beginning of the story, where Claire and Marcelly are up at the whiskey, and they get attacked by Hodgepile and his gang. And Marcelly gets left behind, and Germain is able to escape and go warn the men. But Claire gets taken, and she gets brutally beaten and assaulted and raped. And when the men find her, they murder everyone who was there, except for one. They murder everyone, and they bring Claire home. And then Jamie and Claire have some very painful, real discussions, where Jamie actually asks Roger if he should have sex with Claire, so that if there's a baby, there won't be any doubt who the father is, the way that Roger struggles with the doubt of if Jamie is his or not. And Claire and Roger, I mean, of course, Claire and Jamie talk about that, and they decide to move forward with having sex. And it's this really painful but like beautiful thing. Like, that whole part of the book is so hard to get through, but it's so amazing because it brings them closer in the horrible way, but so beautiful how these two are just, their souls are made of the same thing, and just how they're able to talk through, you know, how Claire says, like, it was different because Blackjack wanted you. Oh, this is hard. But the men that raped her, she could have been anybody, but they just wanted a body to relieve themselves in. And Blackjack actually wanted Jamie. And so it's this hard conversation because it's not different, but it is. And just talking through what that means, and the way Diana handles assault, which people always say, like, oh, these books are so full of assault. And yeah, they are, but so is life. Like, so is life. And the reason I love Diana so much is that she makes it so real, and she talks about it from so many different angles. And each time there may be a situation like this, she finds a new way to come at it. And I think it's amazing and beautiful and really hard to live through, but I love it. All right, let's talk about a fun one. Let's talk about Lizzie and the Beardsley boys, because we need to talk about a light topic for a minute here. So Lizzie ended up sleeping with both of the Beardsley twins. Not at the same time, but they end up kind of sharing her, and she's okay with it. It happens, the whole situation, how it happens is very interesting to read about, but she is pregnant. And this, I said, is one of the other cases where someone comes forward with being pregnant, and then the twins, they both love her. And Lizzie is kind of a badass. Now, if you're someone who watches my other reviews on this channel, you know I really love romance. And I've actually read some menage romances before. This is so funny because this is the first time reading this book that I've actually read other menage stories before. Or polygamous stories or anything like that. And it's just so weird. This one is so weird now reading it again. But so Jamie has her get handfast to one of the brothers, and then he tells the other brother, don't come back until the baby's born. I don't want to see you here. Well, one of them has a mark that marks him as a thief, and when they turn their backs, they mark the other brother so that nobody can tell them apart. And then that night, the three of them go see Roger because Roger and Bree haven't heard about any of this. And then Roger handfasts her to the other brother. So Lizzie effectively got herself married to both brothers in the same day, in different religions, but to different brothers. And then they live together in their cottage, and she's never seen with more than one of them at a time, but she has two husbands. And later in the book, they have their baby, and they both show up. And I don't know, it's really cute, but it really throws all of them because they're like, oh my God, what's happening here? And her father, she tells her father, she's like, and her dad, he's really sweet about it. He's just mortified, but he also loves her so much. And she is like, if you want to be in the baby's life, you have to be okay with this. And it's really cute. I really love it. All right. What should we talk about? Oh, there's so much. Okay, we'll wrap this. We'll get kind of wrapped up with there. Bree is able to, she gets kidnapped by Bonnet. He is going to sell her as a sex slave, basically. But he's such a weird mix of things because she is pregnant again at this time. And so he doesn't rape her again, but he makes her sleep in his bed because he has night terrors. And he says he always fears drowning. And so she literally is forced to lay beside her rapist and comfort him. And it is so painful, but so weird to see where Bree is at, and I'm so proud of her. And that actually leads to when Bonnet finally is captured, they sentence him to death by drowning. And the way that they did this is they would literally tie the person to this pole and leave them there so that when high tide came in, they would eventually be drowned. And sometimes they'll make it through the first day. And so they're out there baking in the sun and slowly dying, and they're left out there as because he's a pirate and a smuggler, and he's left out there as an example until he slowly dies out there. And so Bree wants to end him. And so because when they capture him, her father gives it as her choice. They're like, either Roger or I will kill him for you, or you can do it. She gives him to be turned over to the law. And it actually takes 9 months before he gets sentenced. And she hears how he gets sentenced. And so her and Roger go down there. And she shoots him so that he doesn't have to drown. And I never wanted, the way Diana's able to make you care and care about Bree. Care that Bree is able to sleep at night. Not about Bonnet. We don't give a flying F about Bonnet and his feelings. But the fact that Diana's able to make you care that Briana will be able to sleep peacefully and know that she gave this person, a peaceful death in some way is just friggin' fascinating to me. And I love her. I love her so much. I love her so much. I can't even. So then we have to deal with Bree and Roger. Their baby Amanda has a heart defect and Claire can't fix it. So we need to wait a certain amount of time. And like Amanda would like grow, like she would grow, but like her heart wouldn't. And so if they stay there, Amanda will die. And so they need to find out if Amanda can travel. We already know Jemmy can travel. And Jemmy's actually able to like know that his sister can hear the stones, which is really cute. He's, I think, over 5 at this point. And so they know that they can all travel. And so we have to say goodbye to Bree and Roger, Jemmy, and Amanda. And this is really, really hard. But it's like we know it's coming for a while, because as soon as Amanda is born, Claire knows this. So, but Roger gives Jemmy the choice, to stay with his grandparents. Because he's like, I don't know that we'll ever see you again, but if you want to stay with Grandma and Grandpa, you can stay here. And Jemmy just throws himself at his dad, and he's like, I have to go where you go. And it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful, and it hurts so much. Oh man, it hurts so much that we have to send them back. But at the end, when they're able to get into Lollybrock in the future, and they find a chest, and it has all these letters written in it, and Jamie and Claire wrote them letters of their time, and it's so good. Like, it is so beautiful. So Jamie and Claire actually make it work out so that Lollybrock is like left to them in some way. I know they explain it more actually in the next book how it works out, but that's kind of where we're left, is that we now moving into an Echo in the Bone. We will have Roger and Bree in the 1970s, and Jamie and Claire still back. And Jamie has officially made his switch. I didn't get to that point in here. We gotta wrap. I need to wrap this up. There's so many beautiful things in there where Jamie and John have to kind of have like a breakup, but then we get to see them again near the end. When Bree meets William, she learns she has a brother. She meets him. She doesn't tell him who he is. They make her promise not to, but she meets him. And he is, I believe, 18 at this time. And he is in the army. And John and Jamie are on opposite sides again. And they still love each other. Or, I mean, you know, John, the chapter from John's point of view, I forgot that we have one from his, where he just is always holding himself back from Jamie. Like, whenever I read John's points of view, John is one of the most selfless people. I love him so much. But to see his, like, worry for his son, and not because he's possessive, but because he just worries for his son's future, that if his son found out that he wasn't really, you know, the 9th Earl, and just all these things, he's so nervous, but yet he loves Bree, and he would never, you know, try to keep something from her, and it's just so painful. But Jamie has officially made the switch. He is a patriot. He gets most of the people on the ridge to join his side. The Browns, who we've had so much trouble with the Browns in this entire book, actually join him, and he starts leading, and we're gonna get to see what that looks like a lot in the next book. So, oh my gosh, I only talked about half of these topics on here. I'm sorry, I'd love to talk about more, but those are just a few of them. Tell me any of your thoughts on them. Tell me what you thought of this book. I cannot wait to start the next one. Oh my word, these books are so good. They just rip me apart, and I'm sad I only have 2 left right now. But I'm pretty sure I'm gonna like be rereading these for always. You know, there's people many more years older than me that have been reading these for 40 years over and over again, and it's so great. So thank you so much for watching. Make sure you check out my entire Outlander playlist. I have reviews for all the previous books, as well as all of the TV up until the current episode that's on right now. Make sure you subscribe for more content, and have a great day. Bye.